Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Out of the top 3 teams in the CDL right now, one of them is not like the others, carried by their phenomenal search and destroy, struggling in the respawn modes, and with not particularly good communication, one could argue, compared to their other top competitors. What is going wrong with the FaZe team right now? And come the off-season, will Slasher get removed from the team? Is he the wrong fit for this roster? Is he just a bad player in this particular game? Or is the team around him just making it difficult to succeed? And what player might they bring in going forwards? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into today. Firstly, some more cheaters. We know that Haggy's been trying his best Parasite to try and shut this down. But man, the aim assist this guy had was pretty insane. I mean, look at that snap that he hits there. Wow. That is impressive stuff from this hacker that he came up against. Also wanted to mention the current Breaking Point power rankings we put together. This is what people generally believe right now. And honestly, I don't really care what the power rankings are at the bottom of this list. It's quite clear that London, Guerrillas, and Florida really should be in that D tier. Florida always will go to the major and get a good upset victory as they did this time against Vegas, but I still feel like on the balance, Vegas are the better team. They just got bodied at the major, and right now they're sitting a fair bit behind Minnesota Rokkr, and they're behind them probably in the power rankings themselves, so not looking so good for them. Also, Boston dropped down here to the C tier, which I think is expected and understandable off their recent major run where they came top 12, but they are easily the team down there with the most kind of upset going forward potential. Personally, I would still have Toronto over the subliners. I still think that in terms of likelihood to win an event, Toronto are higher up than New York. New York were decent at the event. They came top 4, but I think that was largely because they had a relatively easy run through it, right? They beat Vegas round 1, not particularly challenging. Then they beat Rokkr to get top 4. Ultra had a couple of matches in losers. Then they played FaZe and they dropped out game 5. So this is very similar indeed to what I would have as my personal list. I think that Thieves number 1, OpTic number 2, they're clearly the 2 best teams right now. Then FaZe are probably in a tier of their own, slightly behind, because they're always going to be there on the championship Sunday and always have a chance to win. And then the B tier is definitely, I would say, these 3 teams. I would have Ultra just in front of the subliners, but that's pretty much what it looks like right now. And if you are these teams in the lower side, and there was even discussions, right, we talked the other day about the teams at the bottom, does it even make sense for them to make changes? And there's an argument to say no, because there's nothing to play for, but also you could argue that there's certain challengers players you might want to try and sign and bring in now, because let's say you've got a good challengers player on the market, the top teams aren't looking for them, right, because their teams are set. But if you're a London or a Guerrillas, and I don't even know what's going on with Guerrillas next year, but if you sign one of those promising players now, then you might be able to keep them into next year. Usually the issue is that you don't know if that player that might happen to be dominating challengers on this title is going to be good next year, but because we think the game is going to stay the same again next year, then whoever's been good in challenges for the last couple of months is probably going to be good next year as well. So there is an argument to say that actually the bottom tier teams should be making changes with next year in mind rather than the rest of this year in mind. But as we dive into this FaZe versus OpTic versus Thieves discussion, I wanted to share this kind of question for you guys. Which is the better team here in Modern Warfare 2? And I think this kind of, to me, sums up some of the issues that we have in the CDL right now with the FaZe roster especially. So your option number 1, Octane, Scrap, Pred, and aBeZy. I mean, this team is pretty deadly, it's got to be said. Option number 2 is Dashy, Cell, Shotzzy, and Hydra. So you give a few minutes, I suppose, or a few seconds, whatever you want to do to think about it. To me, it's very clear, to be honest. I would take number 1 team, hands down, every single time. I think, frankly, I prefer this SMG duo anyway, a bit, because, Hydra and Shotzzy, I think they could work. I think they'd be probably pretty spectacular, and they were honestly going to be a thing on OpTic, right? It was a possibility last off-season, but I wouldn't say I'm quite as confident in this duo working as I would be in Pred and aBeZy finding a way to make it work. So I think I already prefer that part. But also, you've got to look at the comms, right? And this is what people say about Dashy and Cellium. Like, I would like to see Dashy and Cell team together. It'd be a cool story. It could even have happened in a weird world last season, of course, when Dashy was dropped and Arcitys was dropped, and we thought maybe Dashy to FaZe was an option, but fundamentally, put that duo together. Like, okay, the slang's going to be there. Who's the main AR though? Like, who's playing that slightly slower role at times? I think that's honestly one of the issues that the current FaZe team runs into is Slasher. Like, who's the main between Slasher and Cell? Who's the one playing the spawns? Who's the one playing slow? We know how Cell plays, so Slasher almost has to be faster, but I don't really know if he's built to necessarily do that. Dashy is, but still, I think you're lacking a fair bit here compared to what you'd have with Octane, and Octane's comms and everything super valuable. So to me, if there was a best of, 11 between these two teams, I think think this team wins like 6-2, something like that. You guys might disagree, but for my opinion, with all the talent on this roster, there's some pieces missing for making a successful team. And if you look at a team like Thieves, you can see why they happen to be so good. So this is now the question when we go on to look at a team like FaZe, that a lot of the pieces that make Thieves good also make OpTic good. They're very different teams in their own ways. Thieves play way more structured, OpTic play much looser, and it works against different type of teams. I think that OpTic they will destroy a lot of the lower tier teams in the league. The teams that are less disciplined, the teams that are less fundamental based and don't have as much gun skill, like OpTic will roll over those teams. Thieves might struggle a bit more with those teams depending on the clashes of styles, but Thieves against OpTic, because they're more disciplined generally, Thieves, they play in a more structured manner and they've got great gun skill, they are a pretty good counter for OpTic. And that's what Octane says here. So I'll share Octane's opinion on the OpTic team and why he thinks they're so good, but also why he believes their team counters them pretty hard. But also the discussion from FormaL and also from Karma on slash out within this FaZe team, because you look at the numbers, it's very different. Like as Octane says, Octane's, Thieves, and also OpTic and FaZe, they're all very different rosters, but in terms of results and placings and stuff, and just the eye test, FaZe have been by far the weakest of the three as of late. And arguably, to me, that comes down to comms and just generally the fit of the four players, and I don't think Slasher is necessarily best suited for that.
Kyler, like OpTic's respawn success is pretty dependent on Ant and Kyler, and like when they can make those, when they make the game as chaotic as possible for the other team, but like they know what they're doing, if that makes sense. Like Kyler running around, getting a kill, hiding in a corner, Ant dolphin diving off a cliff, getting a kill, hiding in a corner. It's like Simp and aBeZy aren't going to do that, you know what I mean? And that's like, I think Chris and Tyler, even their entire team, is just like really good at adapting to different things in different moments. And I think that OpTic is just thriving in just pandemonium. And I think our team is like very systematic, very VOD review, very like, I don't know, controlled environment. And they're, like I said, all three of our teams are very drastically different, which I think is cool.
I don't think Austin's a bad player. Bro, I just don't think that Austin's playstyle fits on that FaZe team. I'm telling you. I feel like people think I'm like coming at it in like such a negative way attacking Austin, but like I'm really not. Dude, I don't think he's the right fit for that team. I swear to God. I also don't think he's that big a problem as it looks like. Like on LAN, he was doing his thing. And there were times where the other guys didn't look like they were doing their thing. But I also just think, bro, I don't know, dude. I don't think it's the right fit.
Do you think the Terrors are as good as they were back when you played them? I mean, yeah. The tiny Terrors are really good, bro. That little trio is just like disgusting.
That was me looking over at
like any fourth they have, like in the league, basically, they're still a contender for the chip. That's like insane to think about. It's like a disgusting trio.
Shotzzy had a camera on me, so I took my headphones and stared at it. So you'll see it on process.
Imagine they picked up Shotzzy in place of Slasher, like, and they had Simp on an AR, bro. The team might be unbeatable. Do you think Slasher's the problem? No.
I told Ant Kisner was gonna be top match, bro.
Because on one side of things, like,
I literally know their strategy.
like I'm trying to put myself in Austin's shoes. I don't know how good he is, like, at this game, but like from the looks of it, he's been getting slammed. But like when you play with the other three, I don't know what it's like to play with them, so I don't know if they make the game hard or like. I really don't know, because like they're obviously such a good trio, but like there's only so many kills you can get, you know what I mean? So like someone's got to go like even or negative or like .9s, you know. Got it, but like if you're in Slasher position, you just got to get yours. You just got to get yours and make sure your comms are good and make sure the vibes are good. That's what I would be doing if I was sitting with them three. I would just be giving hella gas to the Tiny Terrors and just like being on some weird like duo shit with Cell, late night team speaks and shit. You know what I mean? Like that's all I would do, and then just make sure I rotate. Just make sure I'm vibing. Vibey as hell. That's all I would do on that team. I would not tell them how to play at all. And I bet you Austin has been trying to tell them how to play like throughout the year. Yeah, I think aLLeY was like a huge. I think aLLeY is like the best player to be on that team for them. I still think it was a huge mistake dropping him.
So an interesting discussion I thought there from FormaL, because we know that FormaL and Slasher have had their beef over the last couple of years, and he says, look, he's been getting a bit slammed lately, which is true online. He was definitely getting slammed Slasher online. When it came to LAN, though, he was arguably their best player, I thought, for large parts of the weekends. You can argue, okay, was KD impactful or not, but it's funny, right, because people who have an agenda against a certain player, if their KD is bad, bad, they say, oh, he's getting fried. And if their KD is good, then they say, oh, he's not impactful, he's just playing for kills and all this. So you can't really win if you are a CDL pro and people have, whatever their agenda might happen to be. But Karma says, and Karma's opinion is always held in high esteem, Slasher doesn't fit FaZe. I think you can see that sometimes when you look at the AR duo, when you've got Cellium and Slasher, and it's like, okay, who's playing in the hill? Who's playing for spawns? How does that work in the respawns? Because I think it was never particularly clear. Arcitys it felt like in Cold War Arcitys was the main, but at times he would be the faster flex type player, really, despite being the IGL. I think that was certainly a debate that they had internally during Vanguard. It was like, who's the main AR here between Cell and Arcitys? Because Cell was playing super slow in Vanguard and dropping great numbers, and Arcitys had to do more, but then wasn't dropping the numbers. And there's also, to me, the comms question, because we know how good Octane's comms are for Thieves, we know how good Ghosty's comms are for OpTic, and those are arguably right now the two best communicating players in the game, and their two teams are the two best teams respectively. And even FormaL said not long ago, or he said in that clip, right, I'd just be doing the comms for FaZe and that's what my role would be. And even FormaL says here we would have won everything together to aBeZy, kind of saying that, like, look, if you had me doing your comms and everything like that and playing the role necessary, then we'd be absolutely fine. So this is the thing for FaZe. I don't exactly know what it is about that trio with aBeZy, Simp and Cell. They're obviously still incredibly good, but it does seem like they need a very specific fourth player to make it work. Because, if you look at Arcitys, obviously he was great on that team, and FormaL says, like, they still should have kept him. But you bring in a guy like Slasher, legendary AR, and okay, Slasher, some of his great teams, he had JCap, he had Looney, for example, to help with some of the communication side, and Slasher's comms aren't exactly Octane's comms. Now, if you let's say you magically brought Octane into the FaZe team instead of Slasher, do they become way better than they are? I'm not so convinced, just because Slasher is known as a search and destroy superstar. He always has been. Octane hasn't really been that guy. Slasher has definitely made massive inroads on how their search and destroy has improved this year, and without that, they would be pretty bad. And also, does the Octane Cell AR duo work? Cell's are pretty much like a turret AR, as is Octane. So it's like, maybe it's time for them not to get these more traditional AR type players anymore. And maybe they do need a player like a Ghosty. And look, FaZe won an event this year, but that event win was largely off the back of their search and destroy. I mean, if you think about it, Los Angeles Guerrillas won an event last year with winning all those search and destroys in a row with Slasher. And okay, they have maybe a bit more Championship Sunday ice now than they did with Arcitys, but still, I think you can make a different case really over the last couple of Championship Sundays they've been in, and they get hard countered badly by OpTic, which is, and Slasher versus Shotzzy also doesn't have a particularly good record. And just comparing here the top three teams, I mean, one of these is not like the others. This is Thieves, of course. Look at the hard point, the search and destroy, the control records, all in the green. This is OpTic, a very similar story, clearly the two best teams. And this is FaZe, a very different story, right? When you look at the numbers, okay, Slasher's numbers obviously get harmed pretty badly by his online stage, and as FormaL says, there's only so many kills to go around, but still, something is not right within this camp, right? And FormaL and Karma both believe that Slasher probably isn't the right guy for this team. So who is the right guy? Is it time that Simp goes to an AR role? That'd be really strange. We know that back in the day, Clayster and Arcitys and Bristini got a lot out of those guys in the Black Ops 4 days, when kind of Clay and Arcitys could be the mains. Bristini would pretty much kind of be the flex player on the team. That was in 5v5. And then into the 4v4 days, Arcitys did a great job in that in Cold War. But I feel like those guys were just so insanely good at Cold War that they'd pretty much be undeniable almost whoever they had on the team. The last couple of games individually, aBeZy and Simp haven't been quite so good, and now they do seem to struggle more in these situations. So yeah, what would they do next year? I know many people are saying, where's Pred going to go? And I think this is what will maybe concern OpTic fans to a little bit, or maybe even the Thieves fans as well. I'm sure Thieves fans won't be too concerned because their teamwork is just so good, and they're probably the best actual team, you could say, in the CDL. But it's quite clear that there are some weaknesses on FaZe, and many right now are proposing get rid of Slasher, put Simp onto the AR and bring Pred into your team, and then have Cellium be the full-time kind of, AR type player, so you don't have any role conflicts. But then again, where's the comms coming from? If you bring Pred in, is Simp going to be your comms guy? Tough to say. They don't exactly have an Octane or a Ghosty right now, or even a FormaL to do that job for them. So I think some serious questions for FaZe to answer. It does, of course, depend massively on what happens come the World Championship. But we know last year they got all those second places and they still made a change. If they just win one event this year and get a lot of third places, then I don't imagine they're going to be happy with their roster either. And once again, a change will be made. And Sasha knows full well that if there is going to be a change made, he's going going to be the one to go more than likely. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Just to close out with this question here from the Minnesota Rokkr, build a map pool for $15, I believe you have. So I'm guessing the idea here is you choose one per tier and it adds up to 15. My map pool is going to be Raid Hardpoint. I'm taking Raid Hardpoint for sure. I'm going to do this where like I choose a map mode combination throughout the pool. So I'll take Raid Hardpoint game 1. Game 2, I'll go for Moscow Search and Destroy. I think the map was pretty good for search. There's maybe some other candidates here, but I mean, aBeZy for 5. Like, what are they thinking? Then game 3, I'm taking Checkmate Control. I feel like that's a good pick for the third map of the series. Game 4, Bacage Hardpoint, I would say. And then game 5, I've got to choose one of these for search. I'm probably taking Miami Search. I actually thought Miami Search was hated by some, but actually I thought it was somewhat underrated. So yeah, my series goes Raid, Moscow, Checkmate, Bacage, Miami, which I actually think is pretty good. But Arcitys has a rather different idea, but very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.